I really think a lot of it was media.
Yeah,
It was on the USA Today. It was all over the place. They scared,
Right.
Yes,
on this podcast.
we say it all the time.
They scared the shit out of not only patients, but also of doctors.
Doctors.
Yeah.
Hi, Liz.
Hi, Lee.
Well, and we have a double Liz today, so I'm going to say hello again to our very special guest, Dr. Liz Moran. Welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you for coming and joining us today. We have a lot of burning questions. You are in high demand around this city, and so we appreciate you taking time.
Happy to be here.
to be with us today. So, just a little background. You are a Charlotte native, right?
Correct.
Country Day alumni.
Absolutely.
Duke grad?
Duke undergrad.
Okay,
Yeah.
I can deal with that. Wake Forest grad school.
Wake Forest for med school.
And then moved here?
Did residency here.
Okay, great.
And kind of wound up in a practice back in Charlotte, back home.
Nice.
Yeah. Lucky for us.
Very lucky for us. All right, do you want to just get into it?
I want to get on to it because, I mean, everybody's been, we had an event at our studio recently where people were just burning the questions at you right and left.
And our Q&A.
The Q&A that
Yeah,
we
yeah.
had. So we're going to go with, I'd like to start out with, you have chosen to focus in on women's hormones. Is this correct or incorrect?
No, that's correct. So I
Okay.
still do general gynecology. I don't do any obstetrics anymore. I retired from delivering babies right around the time I turned 40, needed more rest. And so my main focus, or I would say passion and practice, are what I call the bookends of women's health. Women after childbearing or during perimenopause and menopause, and then also adolescents and young women, the two islands of misfit toys.
That is the truth.
Yeah.
So it seems to be trending also. This whole,
Right.
which thank God.
Finally.
It is about time. I mean, I
Finally.
could use the trend, 20 years ago when I went through it. So, we'll get to those specifics and how we all handle it. But since it is trending, and thank God it is, tell us, for people that are 40 and over, where they need to start, when they need to start paying attention to, I don't feel as good. I'm waking up in the middle of the night and I'm sweating. There's such subtle symptoms sometimes at the very beginning, because I remember them, that for years I went on and went, oh, that's just normal. I'm just normal. And what I believe is it's not normal for women to feel bad and to have discomfort and to not be in fully homeostasis no matter what stage of life they're in.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And what's been missed, and it is being talked about more, which you're right, I appreciate, but I still think there is a huge knowledge gap in perimenopause, which just means the lead up and the transition. You know, this is not you're on and then you're off. You spend about a decade on average in the in-between times. And that's really where I think there's an opportunity for optimizing how women feel, because to your point, a lot of the symptoms are subtle, and it also coincides in a time of life that's high needs. You know, most people are parenting, or they have nieces and nephews that are young, they have aging parents, there's work, things at home, responsibilities, pressures to kind of put yourself out there all the time. And I think that that just adds to the confusion about
and
how
don't you
you're
think
feeling.
traditionally, boy, I know you're burning, because I know you're ready for a question, because you already said, I can't wait for Liz to come on. Don't you think traditionally, though, women, or I think, I'm going to say what I think. It feels like in my generation, because I'm 70, that women just went, well, this is just shitty, and that's the way it goes. And so we just martyr ourselves through this stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's still going on. I mean, I can still, when I was at a wedding, we were at a wedding this weekend, and I had a friend to come up to me, and she goes, okay, my sister and I have talked about you. What the hell? It's got to be more than your workout and more than your diet. I'm like, oh, it is. It's HRT. It's hormone replacement therapy. So what was my question behind all that? I mean,
well, no, I think you're right. I mean, if you think about it just from a biologic level, the female body is highly resilient. You have a menstrual period, which is varying hormones every month. and then maybe several experiences of childbirth, which is a complete transformation of your whole body. So in a way, it's sort of baked into the cake for us to be able to navigate, let's call it biologic changes in cues, you know? And so I think that we're able to absorb a lot more. And so we're able to do that. And then what I was seeing a lot, and a huge reason I got interested in this field, is women would like make it, and then it would be DEFCON 1.
Yeah.
Got it.
Like falling apart. So
it.
Yeah.
that's kind
That's a good
of
point.
my passion for women in their 40s. It's actually not that dissimilar of an approach to how I approach teenagers, is to try to put a little support under their feet slowly but surely. So instead of this feeling that it's this I'm normal, drop off the cliff, that's really not true.
Right.
You know, it's
Right.
it's more of put a frog in water and bring it up to a boil.
Yeah.
Right. So if you can kind of give people tools along the way, you can't solve this. I mean, this is not a problem to be solved, but you can absolutely optimize the transitional experience, and it takes a change in approach, and that's hard. So little by little tends to be easier for you to absorb both physically, but also emotionally and mentally, to make small changes along the way, so that when the more pronounced, what we think of as traditional menopause, period stopping, that's obvious,
Sure.
right? But I'd like my patients to approach that feeling like they have a really good foundation.
Okay.
Okay, remind me again when you went into this specific practice.
So I opened Premier 5.5 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. So I opened my own practice so that I could focus on what I wanted to focus on.
Right.
And restructure the way that the practice runs. It's still traditional, you know, GYN practice. We file insurance, we do pap smears and annual exams. But since it's able to be physician-led, we can keep kind of our process.
I like
right, because that's what I hear the most
Yeah.
about you is that people go to you and have plenty of time with you.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
mean that's just
That's
a
so
remarkable
golden.
thing
Well,
that you're
it
offering.
had to be moved. You know,
Yeah.
I loved my old practice. I enjoyed doing, if I had done GYN only, there's just not flexibility.
Right.
And to do it my way. And I don't like to be told what to do anyways. So it was time, it's time to do my own
That's
thing.
why we all get along.
Right.
This is
Yeah.
why we all get
So
along.
the practice environment I wanted, I was not able to carve out in a traditional OB and GYN model. So I just had no choice
your own.
but to invent it. Yeah.
And did that coincide with your, you know, we're about the same age in our 40s, right?
Yeah.
That like
Yeah.
did that kind of coincide? You knew that you had the experience enough to be able to help women in this way.
That's a great question. So interestingly, when I started in practice, I was 29.
Okay.
So I was right out of residency. And most young OBGYNs acquire a group of patients that sort of resemble them. You do a lot of OB younger patients as you're starting, and then your patients grow up. Well, the job that I took, a mentor of mine actually retired right around the same time. And he was, you know, almost 70 at the time, and was really into, of one of the few kind of old school GYNs, it was really a thought leader in hormone replacement and in menopause, and all of his patients knew about menopause and weren't brushed over. So I wound up inheriting a lot of patients that were, I would say, an atypical experience to go through. So I had that from the beginning, which I think piqued my interest. But you're exactly right. I opened Premier right as I turned 40, like a month after we saw our first patient. And I do think probably you're just getting tired. I was just tired. I could tell that my resiliency was down. I couldn't bounce back as fast. It all,
Sure.
in retrospect, I think you're exactly right. I think that maybe was part of the intuitive part. Yeah. I never thought about that. That's really interesting.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Amazing.
And can you, and just to go into, since we're going to talk kind of a little bit more in depth, tell everybody that it really wants to know why, what are the main hormones there? I thought you, in the estrogen, testosterone, go ahead.
Yeah. So in the menstrual cycle, really, if you think about it, ladies or whoever's watching out there, everything is hardwired for reproduction. That's our most primitive function. if that were not a really super resilient system, humans would not have made it. So the typical menstrual cycle, every period you have, for the most part, is your body's response to ovulation that wasn't fertilized. So there's a lot of work that goes into prepping the pelvis for a possible pregnancy. And from the time that the first egg is, an egg is starting to form, and you have one approximately every month that matures, that's a high estrogen time. And the estrogen tells the lining of the uterus to build, and in anticipation of a possible pregnancy. And then at the peak, there's a series of hormones from the brain to the ovaries that interact, and the egg is released once it's mature. The estrogen level goes down because the lining is thickened and it's ready. And then progesterone is what is secreted from the remnant of the egg in the ovary. And that's there because if pregnancy happens, that's the hormone progestation, was named that hangs on to your pregnancy.
Cool thing.
Right, and keeps it sticking. And the ovary only has a limited supply of progesterone. Really, you get it in pregnancy because of implantation. So it has a limited supply. So if it runs out and there's no implantation, the progesterone level drops, and that causes the lining to shed. So you basically fertilize the lawn and mow the grass.
Got it.
Right?
What a great way to describe
So
that.
that's
good
what's
analogies.
happening.
Yeah.
And then as the very beginnings of your periods, when they're first starting in puberty, and as things are winding down, the ovulatory signaling is not quite as strong. It's the same idea, but there's more inconsistency behind the scenes. And that's really what leads to the symptoms that we experience.
But even I remember in my childbearing years, your moods are shifting,
Yeah.
The hormonal changes in our bodies.
Right.
Which you said this before. I've got to give women credit. Boy, we roll with some hormonal changes.
That's why I think the resiliency
We have got
index is
this.
so
Yeah.
high. We can handle that. Testosterone is primarily made from the adrenal glands, but it is also metabolized in the ovaries. And that the primary function of testosterone is around the time of ovulation. That's when it peaks. That makes sense, right?
Right.
Spontaneous horniness.
Spontaneous
with
horniness. That's true.
Ovulation,
Yeah.
like it's
Goes
kind of
hand
baked
in
into
hand.
the cake, right? And it serves other functions as well. But as ovulation eventually goes down, obviously
Right.
circulating testosterone levels follow
So then
as
they
well.
don't want to have sex anymore after that.
There's a variety of reasons, but I think the main one, honestly, that for diminished libido is not ovulating.
Right.
Okay.
Like, why would it
So
be?
what about like on a birth control pill, which I was on for 20 years, and I remember having a very low libido.
Yeah, anything that suppresses ovulation will suppress testosterone levels and will suppress There's some nuance there. I don't want to get
Sure.
too in the weeds, like for your audience, but
Yeah.
so
So stay on your birth control, girls.
yeah, birth control's
Okay.
great. Like I think there are plenty of different options now that have different pros and cons in how they interact with the hormones, and that can be fine tuned.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to adolescence and kind of paint a picture as we go along. And one question kind of overarching that I have throughout this is going to be, how have you seen the female menstrual cycle change over time, and what is that a result of? So in essence, my question is, we've got adolescents who are now starting, generally, maybe this is right or wrong, their periods earlier. And why is that? And then what do you suggest people to do during that time to manage, symptoms and life as young adults? So starting with your youngest patients, what is happening?
Right. Okay. And meaning more in like a historical
Yeah.
context. So the science, I guess, or the biology behind this is the same. This hasn't changed. Periods start when there is adequate circulating estrogen, which is why breast development comes before periods.
Okay.
So that sequence of events of puberty is not changing necessarily, but some of the external factors that influence our endocrine system are more fragile now because of the environment.
Right.
Yeah. So,
So that is
lots
truly happening.
that is definitely happening. And I also think that plays out in perimenopause as well. I think it's
Is that happening earlier as well?
I think that the influences and the way it's perceived are more challenging now because of a baseline lower endocrine and metabolic health.
Interesting.
And I think
Okay.
technology is influencing that too. So I think there are a variety of factors. I think life is just baseline requires requires more energy to get through. Like, when our moms were, I'm 45 for some context. So when my mom was going through menopause, there were long periods of time she just wasn't available.
Right.
Like she might have been
that. My mother
shopping,
was too.
or
Right.
My
Napping.
parents
They
would
just
go to
did what they
Europe for
needed to
2
do.
weeks
Yeah.
and leave us with our grandparents with maybe a number, I don't know. So I think we just are playing with a
Some
slightly
of us go shopping during
different
this
day.
time,
yeah,
too.
we're playing with a lower baseline, I think, amount of, let's call it mental energy or tolerance for tolerance level maybe.
Well, you know where I'm going to go here. Exercise.
Yeah,
Exercise, right? So that's going to help
absolutely.
level this out.
Yeah, and this is a broad generalization, but the adolescence and the perimenopausal, these are perfect bookends.
Right.
One's winding up, the other's slowing down. Both on the clown car, different directions. But same sequence of events.
Another great visual.
And those two groups, the more metabolically fit and the more active they are, 100%
Right.
influences the severity of symptoms.
Meaning the
Yeah.
balance of the hormones.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think that's a takeaway. That's a huge takeaway. And I really give my own, I did HRT as well, but when I was 51, I wish I'd done it earlier because boy, were the symptoms strong. But when I started Hilliard Studio Method at 51, I think I was 51, I felt so much better. I started working this resistance training and all this different movements we do. And that really did help me go through that.
Yeah, think of this as I'm the queen of cheesy analogies, but it's a
they're
complex,
so good.
it's
They're
a
really
complex
good.
topic. So I've
good.
tried to develop
We
some. and
love cheesy analogies.
Perfect. We're
Good.
going to get along.
Yeah.
Think of this as like a building, right?
Yeah.
And you build it in my case, 1978. You can keep up with your building. You can do maintenance. You can make sure the foundation is strong. You can have the HVAC inspected. You can replace the roof, and you can take care of your building. To varying degrees. And you can look around your neighborhood and see exactly what I mean in that. So menopause or perimenopause, think of it as like a change in environmental condition. This is external.
Right.
Earthquake, flood, something.
Yeah.
Right. So it forces the issue that you have to renovate your building. You don't have to.
Yeah. It could
but
fall
it's,
apart.
But
More of the foundation.
yeah. So the stronger the foundation and the better it's been kept up, typically the more resilient it is to that change. But it's still a change. And in order to, you're not going to come out the other side at 55 from 45
Right.
being the exact same, right? But you can be a fabulous vintage building.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
You can have really good lighting.
You can have better details.
Exactly.
You can replace the dental molding.
Exactly.
Right.
Dental.
So that's kind of the way I look at it is you're in charge of getting your house in order. And the more you focus on that along the way with consistency, the stronger your foundation is going to be. And that really that takes you a long ways.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question that's looking at that as a pie almost? So obviously your lifestyle and this foundation are supremely important. How much does the genetic makeup put into this? For example, person A has terrible periods and person B scoots through.
it's true.
We are all working with generally the same function. Then why is it so drastically different for people?
So I think there are a variety of reasons there, and that's a great question. I always ask a really detailed menstrual and pregnancy history when I'm meeting a new patient. Not that those are exactly reflective, but it gives you a clue.
Right.
And pregnancy in general is a test of sort of
So many
metabolic and hormonal your body's ability to absorb that. And that's largely genetic, to a degree, but lifestyle obviously comes into play.
Okay.
So the simple way that I explain to patients is what I normally see is whatever your particular vulnerability is. Let's say that you had menstrual migraines as a teenager, or that had been part of your experience, or you have anxiety and PMS symptoms before your period, or you've struggled with insulin resistance and you had maybe gestational diabetes in one of your pregnancies. Those vulnerabilities tend to be amplified, which is why somebody's main menopausal symptoms might be mood related,
Right.
and some may be unwanted weight gain,
Right.
from insulin resistance, and somebody else's may be something with their immune system, which is another thing that can flare. So we all have the same sequence of events, but I think genetics really play into that experience. And you can't overcome all of your genetics, right? You can improve that situation, but you can't control your genes, you can't control your age, you can't control cumulative things that have happened in the past, and you sure as hell can't control menopause.
Yeah.
So
Well, so let's you go ahead.
Well, no, I was just gonna because I come from a history of heart disease. I mean, as you're sort of my doctor too now, and I remember talking to you about this. My dad, massive heart attack. His dad, massive heart attack, heart disease, diabetes, all the things. And tell me about estrogen and heart disease.
Yeah, this is and
before you say it, I am on an estrogen supplement sort of thing, a pellet,
right,
and my own doctor, who is like, whoa, I don't really love the hormone replacement therapy you're doing, but that is really protecting your heart. Is that correct?
Right. So estrogen has a protective influence on bones, lipid panel, cardiovascular effects, and probably definitely brain, but I'd say that mechanism is less less settled, the mechanism of how that does that. But cardiovascularly, we know how it impacts your lipid profile down to the cellular level.
Yeah.
Like not just on paper, but it's an influence. And so when estrogen levels dramatically decline, which is the crux of the true piece that I would call menopause.
Right.
Right. Then those metabolic markers passively become worse.
Right.
Passively.
Okay. Right.
That you don't have to do anything different for your LDL cholesterol to rise on average 35 points during perimenopause.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and hormone replacement does not solve that, but it definitely mitigates those effects.
It's a piece of that puzzle, don't you think?
Right. And to your internist point, they're looking at risks with hormone replacement. And nothing is risk-free.
No.
But the way
you just weigh it out. I feel like you have to be such an advocate as a woman. You talk, and she sent me to you, and you were the greatest gift because
that's a nice thing to say.
But it's the truth because she's very, very, she's an incredible doctor who goes, I happen to disagree with what you're doing. I want you to see Liz Moran. I did, and you get more of the pieces of the puzzle, and you go, then you get to make the decision. Where is the risk and where is the reward?
And it can be an ongoing conversation that changes over time.
Right.
And as it should be, because as you get older, you accumulate more age and more age-related risk and more lifestyle-related things. And so your risk profile changes as you get older. And so you have to weigh all of that. But, to your point, I just don't look at it as a univariate analysis. Right. Yeah, adding hormone replacement, does it have risk? Sure. But if you think of it more as a supplement, if you were vitamin D deficient, you would take vitamin D.
Right.
So same idea. And since you feel so poorly, even if you don't feel poorly, your cells are changing, not for the better.
Right.
During that, then you can really channel hormone replacement's powers for good.
Yeah.
Your metabolic and cardiovascular risk is probably, I know they can do these age calculations.
She told me
things.
0 the other day.
It's probably the
You were a
same
witness.
as the average, 35-year-old.
Yeah.
So that's a different calculus, for everyone involved. So being on hormone replacement longer has a lower risk for someone that has really used that to prime their health and not treated it passively.
Right. And which I think I'm done. And but again, there are moments in your life, you turn 40, you turn 50, 60, 70. Turning 70, I had a switch and I had to rethink it and I had to relook at it and I had to go see you and I had to go, oh, what should I do here? Where are my risks again? And I had to reconfigure.
Yeah.
And so it's never, you've got to continually be your own advocate and go to a good doctor and never settle for, well, that's just what you got in life.
Fair. And perimenopause is particularly challenging because in menopause, when the ovaries retired, let's say, we have a flat line. So we know what we're working with and we can replace in order to get, and there's science behind this about how you try to replace. The lead up is harder. There's not a solution for a flickering light bulb. So we don't have anything that's very precise for this. So that is also a journey that I think takes, if we start talking about it earlier, then people are more accepting of that. And
tell me
that hormone piece is different along the way. It's a great point.
And then there the car runs into the tree. You get breast cancer.
Yeah, things happen.
Shit happens, right? And so so is it a black and white issue with, say, I'm just going to call out breast cancer, that you can never, ever, ever, ever do hormone replacement?
It's actually not, because all cancers are multifactorial, and there are there's nuance within breast cancer. And I've had several patients, and this is supported by NAMS, the North American Menopause Society, that have had maybe an early stage breast cancer or a breast cancer or atypical biopsies or family history, that they've really been monitoring their breast health in their maybe early to mid 40s. But then, and so hormone replacement, they're told, or they feel like is not an option in any way. And then their symptoms can become completely unmanageable. And I had this conversation. The first patient I ever put on low dose hormone replacement that had breast cancer is a physician. And so it was a great example of someone who was really able to weigh risks and benefits. And, there are some repurposed medications for menopausal symptoms that are hormone free. And that's really important for people to know. There's a lot of other friends out there that can help. And in the case of this patient, the side effects from various trials, and she tried several different things, were unmanageable. And she just said, you can write it in my chart. Like, I will take the trade-off that I think my risk of having a repeat breast cancer are higher if I feel like this. I'm not sleeping. I'm metabolically less healthy. I've gained weight. I'm miserable. I'm snapping at everybody, and I feel like I'm crawling out of my skin. And you know what? She's probably right.
That's true.
She's probably right.
So the definitive answer is not definitive. First of all, it does not cause breast cancer. Is that
causative
correct?
Has never been shown as a causative effect.
Okay, that's a big.
Can we reference
some of the
what
old,
happened to make people think this?
Yeah, that's great. And this is a great segue.
Right.
Some of the older, more synthetic hormone replacement, they still exist. I still have patients on them, actually, were shown in a trial called the Women's Health Initiative trial to have a higher statistically significant incidence of several issues. The problem with that study, and it's been micro-dissected since, and it's just taking a while to get it back into the conversation. But that study was not really representative of what we're talking about here. The average age was much older. There were some controlling for other risk factors, but not really what we're talking about. And the hormones were different. I still have patients on synthetic hormone replacement.
Do you try to get them off, or you don't?
I would like to get them off,
but they like it.
Yeah, I've had several patients.
My mother was on Premarin.
Premarin is
back in the day.
Yeah, I don't. I always have a conversation about lowering the risk, but at the same time, you have to factor it in. So that's hopefully that answers that question.
No, that definitely does.
That study came out in 2000. I was in medical school, and it was the way it was. I really think a lot of it was media. It was on the USA Today. It was all over the place. They scared,
Yes, we say it all the time.
They scared the shit out of not only patients but also of doctors. Yeah. And so all of a sudden, menopause went from something that I think was experienced more mildly. People are also living longer now, so there's more of a cohort.
Sure.
Something that was managed or manageable to something that was like not to be spoken
Yeah.
of.
Right.
Right. So we're just trying to bring back some sanity and nuance to the discussion.
Right.
And that's really, I think, where modern menopausal management should be going.
Well, that's what makes it so hard is how hard the pendulum swings. And then the relearning and the re-education, I think, is very challenging. So you're
It is.
kind of up against a wall. And at the same time, I think we're lucky to the very beginning point that we're talking about this more,
Yeah.
women's health. And so people have
But
so
there's
much
still
interest.
there's still so many questions women have, and I think most of it is, well, how do I do? Do I get pellets? Do I get creams? Do I get gels? Do I get pills? Is
Right.
there a no, or is there go to a doctor that gives you the options?
There are a variety of options for hormone replacement delivery,
Okay.
which is great. We've got a lot of tools. It's important to realize that this is not a uniform situation. So typically, this is typical. The first supporting hormone is typically progesterone. Normally, as you're reaching menopause, the ovary is starting to spurt and sputter, but it's still making hormone. It's just making it inconsistently. And so you wind up with 5-6 years, and probably a lot of women can imagine that this is going on in their body, where you get a relative estrogen increase, which sounds weird because you're thinking estrogen
Yeah.
decrease. Well, you get too much before you get too little.
It's crazy.
And you have too little progesterone. And so it's that massive imbalance. Remember when we talked about fertilizing the lawn and mowing the grass, the peaks of those hormones, it's almost like a perfect wave. And then this goes to being something where the estrogen spikes really high and then the progesterone's wimpy. And so those lead to symptoms. And then along the way, the estrogen then falls. So, I wish we had something like a glucose monitor and an insulin pump. I mean, that's what we need.
Yeah.
Wow.
Is a sensor. But which doesn't exist. So I try with my patients to patch together like a fake pump. We just try to do the best we can with the tools that we have.
Yeah.
But I'm very clear with them. There are a few years in there that
Yeah. You
we just have to
don't
do
know.
the best we can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
you're pretty excited, aren't you? Because
Well,
Dr.
yeah, because I
Moran-
did my first blood panel, and we
Uh-huh.
won't necessarily use me or go into me as an example. However, I did say a podcast or so ago when we haven't even met at your office yet, but I kind of did my own look at the panel, and it was like in the normal range, and I was like, damn it. Like you almost are searching for something to be
But
off.
then you talk to the
help.
doc and
Right. And I think it's important to remember with lab work, and this maybe will be helpful to some of your listeners. Lab work is used to screen for disease. It's not looking for wellness. The
Yeah,
ranges,
interesting.
the ranges on those labs are to flag outliers.
Got
right?
it.
So, but
Yeah.
you can see trends. That doesn't mean someone has thyroid disease if their TSH is 3.5, but if it used to be 1.5 and now it's 3.5, that can indicate that there is a difference there for them.
So you're advocating getting blood work at least once a year, twice a year?
I love women over 40 to have a metabolic panel at least once a year. And that's really helpful. I pull it out all the time.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, we're 47. I'm like, let's look back at your labs.
Right.
I went to my doctor. They said everything was fine. Well, they're right. You don't have diabetes or
Right.
whatever, but your hemoglobin A1C, which is one marker, for example, was 4.9 when you were 50 or 40, and now it's 5.3. That's a relative huge increase in your average blood sugar.
Right.
On average. So that's the nuance is important.
So I'm seeing a lot of your
Yeah.
patients wearing glucose monitors.
My favorite tool.
Yeah, I can tell. I know who's going to you because they're all wearing, and they're all at our studio. Trust me.
Yeah.
And you actually told me to
Wouldn't
do it.
surprise
And
me, yeah.
I mean, I'd actually love to do it just to sort of, really see because I think I've got it in control. But it's
I
great
love a
idea.
glucose monitor. It's the best. And
We're all going to get one.
yeah. Well, most of the guys in the I'd say the metabolic space. This is your Huberman Lab and
Yeah.
TI, will say that there's no perfect measurement for metabolic health. You can go to the Mayo Clinic and you can get in the bariatric chamber and do all this stuff, but in practical life, we don't have a real-time monitor for that. So a glucose monitor uses, or you can use if you interpret it as such, glucose variability and the spikes of blood sugar as a surrogate for insulin resistance. Yep. Which is why I think it's so helpful, because most women don't realize how much that's varying throughout the day.
And I've never worn one before, but if I had a piece of pie, would it just go berserk?
Yeah. And then you'd see if you needed the pie, which we all need the pie
interesting.
sometimes.
Good point.
Yeah, if you needed the pie, but you took a brisk walk or did a brisk 20-minute at least walk, or did 10 to 15 minutes of isometrics within 30 minutes of having that you would also see the spike be
the other way,
come down.
Yeah, honest.
It doesn't reach its peak. You cut it off.
So exercise, once again, being a really big key to keeping your blood sugar in.
I just think that's an important tip. You don't have to have a perfect diet or a perfect, but if you walk the dog for 20 minutes after dinner, even if you had a meltdown and had pizza binge with the brownie troop, which everybody does.
We all do this.
Of course. You actually have some agency to mitigate that.
That's great.
And I think that's so empowering, you know?
So this blood sugar and glucose monitor, same thing. You're going to wear this for the rest of your life? I mean, you're just going to get a gauge on how your body works?
Unless someone is extremely... I try to recommend this in the context of someone that I've given some other tools for metabolic health, or they have some background. And these are not for diabetics. That's a different situation. But I think 3 months.
Interesting.
I think 3 months is enough time for it to sink in. Rosé by the pool, as it turns out, every single time I keep doing the same thing, hoping for a different
rosé by the pool.
Yeah,
come on. If I swim the laps, that would
exactly
it's still the thing. Alcohol is a thing, isn't it? Boy, I mean, it will pop your glucose like a.
Yeah.
You know, well, we've been watching the Vikings, or I have, and you've been like cringing. But I mean, we sit in there, and lately, we'll have a couple glasses of wine at night, and I'm like, we probably need to get up and stand and watch the Vikings, or pace the room.
Just have the wine and do squats at the same time.
Doing squats.
Always looking for a thing.
But this is all a balance, right?
Yeah.
People that are, I shouldn't say people, I'd say being overly rigid with your diet or exercise routine, your bedtime, et cetera. It takes a lot of the fun out of life.
Yeah.
And that's actually, we need to bake that into the cake too.
I agree. That's where I agree.
That's not an ingredient. It's not all about diet, exercise. We have to make sure that we're balancing the fun part.
And that's why I love at the end of your bio, you've got a husband and 2 girls, and you love travel, food, and wine.
Yeah, who doesn't? Travel, food, and wine.
Who doesn't?
Yes.
Yeah. But, I mean, it's nice to hear from a doctor that balance, that, we feel so much pressure in our lives anyway. This is a hard process anyway. You're going to give us all the tools and realize that
we're
doing
about
the best
same
we can.
age. So this is a high demands time.
It is.
Not everyone has, the generation above in their lives in as good of shape.
That's true.
People caring for aging parents and loved ones at 70 and beyond can also be challenging.
I did that. That's stressful.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
Definitely. So the hope, or the approach that I take, it's not received by everyone this way, is to slowly start unpacking this little by little along the way. Even patients don't ask me if they're over 40. I'm like, we should start thinking about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Just to lay the seeds. And the hope is that over time you develop a strategy that, because hormones are not a magic wand, exercise is not a magic wand.
Yeah, true.
Life won't allow for perfection in those things. Targeted supplements aren't perfect. Your sleep's not going to be perfect every night. That's just not realistic. But if you spread your strategy, your approach, right, across multiple different things, then you've created balance. If you think back to your building, we put some scaffolding on it from different angles, right? And then we have multiple support mechanisms, so nothing has to be perfect.
Right.
Can we talk about those items that
that.
you can
Love
control just a little bit more specifically? These are the tools, these are the things that we can work on. Do you have like a top 3, top 5 when it comes to
Yeah.
exercise, sleep, blah, blah, blah?
Yeah, there you could make this as complicated as,
Sure.
as you want, but for the purposes of this and in the purposes of counseling in my office, once again, we can't control our age, we can't control genetics, we can't control things that have accumulated in the past, and we can't control menopause.
Yep.
Right? So we do have some things that we can optimize.
Okay.
And I really do call it optimize and not solve.
Right. That's
Right.
so good.
So part of the reason that I like to do a lab panel and look at someone's baseline insulin resistance, their B12, their vitamin D, some of these things is I'm like, first, let's address the low-hanging fruit.
Okay.
Like there are some targeted supplements and some things we just need to know about so we can deal with them.
Okay.
You're vitamin D deficient. It's not going to change your life to go on a supplement, but we know it helps your immune system function better. So let's not miss that.
Right.
Same with B12. So we address the low-hanging fruit. Easy enough. Probiotic, I throw into that category as well. That's easy enough. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to buy one that you have to like massage at night and sing to sleep. People get into this. I get some crazy questions about probiotic. I'm like, just take the damn thing. Yeah,
Just
I don't
take
know.
one.
Yeah, just put
We've
one in.
got one at Hilliard Studio
Just
Method.
put one.
I take it every
in.
night.
It doesn't really
Awesome.
matter. Like whatever you're gonna do consistently.
Do it.
So
Right.
low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
One. The second is sleep hygiene.
Yep.
We part of perimenopause and menopause is having some decline in your natural ability to go to sleep and stay asleep, and you can't 100% solve that. But we know that your circadian rhythms will start to creep up. So an earlier bedtime's really, really helpful. You will usually get your best sleep, especially in perimenopause, between 9 and 4. And so when you wake up 4 a.m. wide awake, which happens to me, especially in certain times of the cycle, which is more detailed than we need, then you know what? I just lean in and get up at 4 and get some shit done.
Yeah.
So
There's a lot you can do between 4 and 6.
totally,
And 7.
and you'll find that there's certain things that trigger worse sleep than others, and there, that's a conversation that I have with patients. Is I'm like, let's at least see if there's some habits that are manageable for you to get a handle on.
Yeah.
And a magnesium supplement, I'd say pretty much universally is helpful for that. It
Okay.
can, to varying degrees. So sleep hygiene.
Yeah.
And then we've talked a lot about diet and exercise.
Right.
And those are, really I would call our core things to work on. Diet, instead of calories in, calories out, we need to think more about in glucose neutrality, which is what we were talking about and why the glucose monitor can be helpful. It's a different calculus. That is tough for us that came up in like the SnackWells generation.
Yes, you
This
two
is-
did.
Yeah.
We
The
did.
SnackWells-
Nothing fat. Y'all did not eat anything fat.
SnackWells, Diet Coke, Jazzercise, Stairmaster.
Gummies.
Yeah, so it's really less about, obviously calories are important, and I'll tell patients that are really new to this, I'm like, if you just do one thing, it's see where there may be some hidden sugar in your diet that's easy to get rid of.
Right.
And then focus more on protein.
There you go.
So that's a very basic way to, you have to reframe diet. Almost everyone.
Because we're really just trying to keep that homeostasis. We're trying just not to go on the roller coaster
Correct.
of
If
feelings.
your blood sugar remains like the time that it's neutral or in range, your body's forced to burn fat for fuel
Okay.
because it doesn't have available
Okay,
glucose
that's
to burn.
really.
Yeah.
Say that one more time, because they need to hear that. That's
Yep.
When
information.
glucose is available, it's a biological mechanism. This is not we are primed to do this. Think about primitive us.
Yeah.
You never knew when you might stumble into a blackberry bush.
Right.
Right? So if you found something with high glucose,
Right.
it was primed to be stored for use later.
Right.
And so that gets stored as fat right around the middle, and your body will burn it if it is in your bloodstream for your brain instead of accessing your storage in your fat cells and in your liver. Okay. So you have to retrain your metabolism. Is sort of how I look at it. You have to remind your body how to burn fat for fuel because our environment does not focus on that at all. Like that's half the problem in the population. And then exercise. We said movement. Any type of movement is great, especially after eating. That's a pro tip. And then strength training. You have to build your skeletal muscle mass. This is really, really important because that is declining
Right.
after 40.
Right.
And building your skeletal muscle mass is almost like your metabolism sort of preserver.
Okay.
Right? So
Yeah.
it's going to go down, so we got to build it
Build
up.
it
right?
up.
So we do have some agency over our blood sugar management
Right.
and our muscle, our focus on muscle building, let's say. And then the last one, and this I think is the hardest for women, I think it's uniquely hard in this time of life, is managing stress. And I call this boundary setting. So taking a good look at your emotional, can I say fuck?
Yeah, you can say fuck.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We love to say it.
Great. So we only have so many fucks to give. And they are not an infinite resource. And so if you think about that, your body is harder to manage now, whether you like it or not. You're higher maintenance, you need more rest, you need less drama, you need more sleep, you need more time to exercise, you need some time, and you have to redistribute your fucks. So you can,
Title of the podcast.
you need to put more
That is a good one.
more into self-care, and then there are plenty of things that are good to cut out.
Yes.
You know, so I call it boundaries. I think re-looking at where your emotional reserves are being spent and making sure you're doing a good inventory of that. One example that I do is I look at my calendar ahead of time about every 6 to 8 weeks. And you know how things slowly accumulate on the calendar.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's in
Oh, yeah.
3 months.
Yeah, that's
And
nothing.
look, and then first of all, what's mandatory? Okay,
Right.
we're adults. There's mandatory stuff. Like, okay, that stays. What is non-mandatory? And then rank that in order of importance. And then some things have fallen down the list. And it's okay to be like, I can't actually get lunch with you that week.
Right.
Right.
Like that week, I'm maxed out.
Right.
Right? I don't feel well if I go out 3 nights a week for something social, even if they're all awesome. Like
Of
your
course.
body can't bounce back from that anymore.
is the
So
truth.
editing that really consciously and taking no shit for it.
Yeah.
I love
is-
that. That is maybe the best advice. I
You
mean,
have-
really,
you
you
have
have to do
to.
that. Yeah.
Think about what teenagers do
No, I
when they're
know.
going through this. They lock themselves in their room and listen to music and
We should take a
Do-
page out of that.
Right.
absolutely. Teenagers are natural boundary setters. They're like,
Done.
Mom, cringe, don't drop me. Like, ugh. You know, they don't have a filter. They're setting boundaries internally.
Yeah.
And we're not.
And then we
we need-
forget that somehow.
Absolutely.
Then I think we focus on self-care in such an aggressive way where everything's hard enough anyway. So when we're talking about adding things to the calendar and we need all these things are great, like facials and massages and
Well, then
it's like
anything in the excess is just going to be more stress.
more stress, right?
Right.
Totally. What's the return on investment? Sometimes the girls' weekend
Yeah.
is actually not timed well. That's no one's fault. These
Right.
can
Right.
be your best friends from college,
Yeah.
and something came together. But this happens to me all the time. I got very good at saying no, when I doing residency.
Right.
You know, that's in my 20s. I spent most of it working, 100 hours a week overnight. So, and you could like never take vacation. It was not like Grey's Anatomy.
That
People were not like
you didn't have those cute.
no,
Yeah.
no. Anyway, so they were just, I can't go to your wedding. I'm on
Right.
call that entire weekend. I
Yeah.
can't move mountains. And so setting limits on what you're doing, I think we have to. We really do it. And to your point, less really is more.
Yeah.
So things, just the return
Yeah.
on investment aren't there. And that takes some thinking. You have to
Sure.
think about it.
Right.
About
Especially at y'all's age. Because, I mean, I
Yeah.
feel like it comes a little more naturally when you get to be 60, 70. But boy, in the 40s, it is hard to say it, to feel it.
Yeah.
And to have that courage
I've
and
gotten
and no
better.
fuck to give. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you don't like it? That's the way it is.
Yeah, you just
Yeah.
can't. And I think that is a way women forget that they can access this hidden reserve of resiliency. They're just spending it
Yeah.
on something that is not needed. Sometimes it's worth it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's worth it. You want to
course.
go to the concert or the whatever, and
Right.
you kind of know you're not going to feel great the next day. Totally fine. Compensate for that with what you can.
Right.
right? Don't do that 3 nights in a row, or
Yeah.
get a
Right.
really good workout in that day.
Yeah.
You can balance
That
it.
does bring my energy back. I mean, because we do that. We kind of go, but then I'll go. We were in New York, and I know when I'm going to go down. I know when
Yeah.
I'm going to get sick. I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have spent that last night after midnight, and
Yeah,
don't-
it's worth
just-
it at times.
Then you know it. Then you know it, and you go,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
shock.
Right.
Got you came down with whatever was in the air. You
Yeah,
know?
or you're just sick of being around people.
exactly.
You just need quiet and space.
Yeah.
And that's okay too.
I love
Your
my
body's,
quiet.
changing.
Yeah. Yeah, and it doesn't have, and I love your point. It does not have to be some like construed. I'm going into a meditative state. I just want to
Yeah. I
close
don't
my door and I'm going
meditate.
to put on.
I don't do yoga. I don't journal. I don't do any of that stuff. I have done some Botox, but I make her come to my house because I'm like, I just can't. Like, I don't do facials. I like get the creams. I
well,
like
your
the
face
lotions,
is pretty amazing.
And then that's like,
Yeah,
it's pretty much, the extent. I don't go
I
get
think you got it.
massages.
yeah. Because
I do almost all my shopping online. I love food and wine.
Yeah.
So this is just another example.
Yeah.
So I just
We should have had wine
now
today.
fully total rosé. We can watch our
Rosé.
blood sugar.
We could.
Right.
I'll take a nap later.
I do all my shopping pretty much on Instacart.
Yeah.
And that really gives me some time back. Is exactly what I would have picked out.
Yes.
I do
No.
get my own protein and produce usually, but
Yeah.
that saves me a lot of time. And
does.
it's just that's not useful.
Brilliant. Well, I mean, the week off we have, I don't do anything when you're not here. I barely eat. I like boil some beans.
Sit in quiet.
Yeah, I sit in quiet and watch movies you won't watch. I
So
mean, it's,
is it starting to sound better without me? Is that
no,
what you're
it's
saying?
not. It is the balance, though.
Right.
It is the balance, and no, it's not about
I
being
know.
without you. It's about
It's an
being
energy
without
level.
stimulus.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've got no stimulus.
And y'all are out and about.
We
and,
are out.
That's
Yeah.
just part of thinking about that. And
Yeah.
a lot of your clients,
Yeah.
are like that. I've got a pretty
Right.
good excuse with work.
Right.
Honestly, that's
Right.
actually,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. I've got to be up because I've got to take care of you tomorrow. I mean, I've got to be in bed because I got to take care of
so
you tomorrow.
it's kind of like
Right.
what I would tell my teenager. I'm like, throw me under the bus all you want. I don't care what your
Yeah,
friends think about
exactly.
me. Tell them you have a
Exactly.
psycho mom.
Yeah.
Tell them that you will literally be murdered if
Yeah.
throw me. I do not care
love
what a
that.
14-year-old thinks.
Exactly.
So y'all can throw me under the bus. You can be like, we've got this psychopath doctor, and
She
is
said
gonna.
we
She
can't
comes
go.
and makes rounds at the house to
She
check blood
does.
sugar in the morning, and
Yeah.
like she is
I gotta
militant,
go to bed.
and she will kick us out if we don't do it. And I don't care what the others think.
That's
love
so
it.
funny. One other tip I want to hit quickly, we've used so much of your time, is about the teenagers. Is there something that you can give us as mothers to say initially to your daughters going through this besides going to you? I mean, do you have, like my daughter is 15. We have not yet gone to an OB, but like we're on that precipice. So it's like advice to just get your daughter there and what to say to parents in
good
that
question.
stage.
I think it's good to remember if you're a mom in your 40s and you have a daughter that's over the age of 10, you're both on the clown
same
car.
thing. Yeah,
Right. Like when they're kind of crazy, so are you.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's like number one thing to remember
Okay.
with daughters is to kind of cut them a little bit of slack.
Yeah.
And then think about, I can't speak to what it's like raising adolescent boys. I don't have any. I don't know, about boys. But what young women and young teenagers are trying to really do is they're trying to have agency, right? They're wanting, because I said so is really irking them. But that irks you too.
Right.
So figuring out how to give them enough rope, not so much they hang themselves,
Yeah.
but enough rope. I think that's the parenting that is unsexy as a parent. You're not taking center stage. It is an act of service behind the scenes to have your teenager feel like she's in charge of whatever's happening, even if you've curated it down to the, micro drop. But that's really important, not to try to
Yeah.
insert yourself in that if you
Absolutely.
can. It's
That's good
definitely
advice.
like take a step back. I think
Yeah.
that's really important. They actually have a really similar foundation helps them. They may need to go to bed later and sleep in. They definitely need movement and activity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that should be really mandatory for lots of reasons. Control the devices. That is a boundary
Huge.
that is the hill to die on for girls.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you're saying that.
Control the devices, especially the social media.
So you've got, how old are your daughters?
14 and 11.
And so do you allow them to have the devices all the time, or how do you do that?
So we got, Molly is my older one. She got an iPhone for her when she turned 13, which was the end of 7th grade. Now, I will say to those Gen Xers out there, like, they really do need a way to call home. Like, there's not the office with the phone anymore or the payphone.
Yeah.
So when she was in 6th grade, we got her a phone that essentially could call and text. And it had some curated apps. There's some services that can do this. This was called Pinwheel. And so the phone was there, but it was pretty boring, right? And so that's the main way. Now she's going to high school next year, and I think she's got good boundaries around the phone.
But when you're at home and having dinner, do you say no phones?
We try really hard. You guys have both been in my office. I think we have no screens in our rooms. That is that is intentional.
Oh, that's right. You do.
Like, you're just not available.
Yeah.
Like,
Gotcha.
So we really do try to set boundaries. We could be better about it, like all parents. I mean, that it's hard for us to.
It's an interesting time with that situation.
But that's a way you can help, I think, them set boundaries, and that's unnecessary stress. Low-hanging fruit is having problems you didn't even know you needed to have. At that age, sure.
Yeah, no borrowing trouble.
I know. Is there anybody
understand.
in any of these categories, adolescence, we're kind of skipping over pregnancy and all of that, and we know there's lots of infertility issues and issues
we don't have
there.
to hit them all.
I know.
We can always do that again.
But so then I'm going to the end. Is there anybody in this perimenopausal group that is an outlier that would be very different to approach? Like, I'm just trying to think.
As far as, there are some patients that I have my radar up on, and am maybe going to suggest, if they're my patient, that we consider some baseline perimenopausal. Labs are not perfect. There's no crystal ball with this, but they're the best we have. So I think we should use the tools we have. So I might suggest that they have those at 35.
Okay.
Right? Or if they have an autoimmune disease, or they have endometriosis, or they had infertility and did IVF because they're already told their ovarian reserve was low, et cetera. Those patients are going to have the same sequence of events, but their timeline is going to be shifted up. And so that they really get missed and ignored out there for sure.
Yeah.
But same approach.
Same approach. Okay.
Same approch.
Well, it's so refreshing to have a doctor like you.
In her hoodie,
in my
sweating
world.
on. I'm sweating now. I don't know when the humidity rolled in, but you're probably not sweating.
No,
we are in the sweaty season. I am dripping.
45.
Yeah, it's right here.
Every podcast.
You just wait to get my age.
We're just
coasting.
just three girls sweating on the porch.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, I think it's great. Okay, but thank you so much. This is an incredible. I'm trying to think of questions. I can't think of any more.
No, I just really
We can do a follow-up later if you want to.
Our clients
my favorite topic to talk about, obviously.
And you're
I have no notes. Like, I don't need notes. This is just a fun thing to talk about.
Well, and talking to you, rolling into your office and, being me, I was like, I'm 70 years old. I can't remember how long we talked. That's what's unusual about your practice also, is you sat down and you weren't looking at a time watch. You were just kind of like, okay, tell me more.
And I'll give,
I'm like, okay.
That's true. And I really want to practice that way. So I limit my schedule. Yeah. That may mean that there's a lead time, and I'm unapologetically setting my own boundaries.
Right.
With that, because I can't do a good job if.
Right.
So that's another example. It's not super comfortable. It's much better to martyr oneself, and it feels better in the moment.
It's no fun.
It feels better in the moment, right?
Yeah.
To just be the yes person, but at the same time, that's also that's a weakness that a lot of doctors have.
Right.
Yeah. So I just have to be very rigid with that.
Yeah, and you've got
boundary enforcement.
There it is. Well, I'm. Hey, you've got it,
and y'all should too with your You
I know.
Are as much
we have been hardcore lately.
And being out there and your fitness, that's just important.
It is.
Your job is really similar to mine, and the hairdressers and the realtors, decorators.
Everybody's a therapist in a way.
Yeah, out there. Yeah, totally.
And when you're giving that energy, it's knowing when
When to stop.
Stop
Totally.
and take it back.
When
That
to
is.
stop.
And you have
Yeah.
help. You have one other main doctor with you, Dr. Graham. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I have a nurse practitioner.
Who I saw, Jasmine, who is wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
So I know it's hard to get on your books, but there's
Yeah.
opportunities.
Totally. And the reason that we have the nurse practitioner, I waited forever to find the right person, is a lot of times that laying of the groundwork,
Right.
you know, that really helps. She can order labs and she
Right.
can kind of give you some base. I mean, I've trained her. She's my little Padawan. But then I like to do the medical management piece.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, a lot. And then decision making.
Yeah.
That's how
That's
we
great.
work.
Yeah,
Anyways.
it works great. Do you think that I'm your fitness Padawan?
Yes, you are. Oh my gosh, you are. Isn't it great?
It is so great.
Isn't it wonderful?
Yeah,
And,
and-
we set our boundaries.
We're working on that.
Boundaries.
I might need a
Yay,
few
I
around
know.
you.
I know.
No, and one thing that I just love is that lean in aspect. There's
Mm-hmm.
a lot that we're going through perimenopause, menopause.
Own it.
Right?
It
And
feels
that
better to
lean
own
That's
it.
that's the whole be powerful
Own it.
thing. Remember, own it. Just
Feels
own where you
better
are,
to own
baby.
it.
It's just it's what it is anyway. You can't deny it.
Absolutely. Well,
you can-
biology always wins.
Well, you know what? I feel like I've circumvented some of my stuff. I mean, I not circumvented, but just I took a set of variables that came into my
Yeah, and
body, and I went.
you addressed
Here's
them.
how I see it. I see what could happen. No one lived to be my age except
Right.
my mom, and it's not about longevity. It is about living healthy. It is about feeling good in your skin. It's about joie de vivre, the joy of life, and having
And you
wine
had-
if you want to.
You
and-
had to change
Yeah.
how you were approaching things. In order,
Exactly.
you had to meet the conditions.
Exactly.
You didn't control the conditions.
Yeah, and
Right.
that's it. To spend your energy on, I wish that hadn't happened to me, or I wish I had different parents, or I wish I had this, wish I had that, is just another stressor in your life that you can't do a damn thing about. And
No.
yeah, so that's out.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, Lee, let's land this train.
We are
Land the
covered
train?
it.
Yeah.
Land the plane. We're
Yeah.
on the
Covered a lot
train.
of-
We're on
we
a
covered a
clown
lot of
car.
territory.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
did.
well
Yeah,
done.
clown car.
Thank you.
What in the? I think is it give no fucks, or is it you're in the clown car, enjoy the ride? Then we're looking for
Listen,
titles now.
if you're on the clown car, you might as well learn how to drive it. How about that?
There it is.
You get to
Cheers
get
to
off.
that.
Yeah.
You get to get off. Eventually, it's how
I'm
how
all-
frazzled you are
Yeah.
at the end of the ride, right?
Oh my God,
This
I
is
love
good. This
it.
has been a pleasure. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so
It's been
much,
fun.
Liz Moran.
Sorry, I wasn't dressed up. You guys
No,
look so
she's
nice.
been
Listen.
working out because she's smart and she's a doctor. And she knows what she's talking about.
It's my day off.
Yeah.
I didn't have time to shower.
Yeah.
It's more
Oh,
important to come here.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm glad you did,
Everybody
too.
who's listening, thanks.
All right.
you
Well,
so
we might
much.
have you back
You're welcome.
sometime.
Yeah, it would be
Thank
great.
you.
Thank
All
you
right.
so much. Yeah.
All right. Love you.
Love you. Love you. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to us today, wherever you get your podcasts. And remember, you can now find our podcast on YouTube.
Yeah. If you liked it, please share, rate, and review. We love 5 stars. And we hope you'll work out with us online or in studio at HilliardStudioMethod.com.